click that go live button on YouTube. I think we're getting rolling, guys. Howdy, hello, how's it going? How is everyone doing today? Thank you for joining me. Today is July 22nd, 2020. Can you guys believe it? We've been surviving 2020. It has been an absolutely insane year, a crazy year, all kinds of crazy things happening. So once again, I'm sitting down for lunch with an awesome, crazy kind of food. Today, giant cookies. Look at these things. These things are so big. I mean, it's a giant friggin' cookie. So I saw these at the store and I was like, you know, I see these every time that I walk through Safeway to do some grocery shopping, and I've never really stopped to pick them up. They've always looked really good, so today is the day. Ooh, wow. Now, these are just regular sugar cookies. But man, got a really nice chew to them. Very sweet, a little bit crispy on the edges, with kind of like a mixture of different textures. Awesome flavor too. You know, I'm usually not super impressed with the Safeway store bakery stuff, but ooh, these giant cookies are actually really, really good. I like these. I'm gonna have to like put those on the list. Maybe one of these days I'll do like a Safeway giant cookie eating challenge or something like that. I mean, I think this was, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like this is about a dozen cookies. Weighs almost 2 pounds. So a huge amount of cookies in there. Very, very tasty. Well, I hope that you guys are doing well. I want to check in. I want to see how you guys are doing. How the pandemic and everything and like social changes, cultural changes are affecting you. How are you doing? How are you hanging in there? Are you sitting down? Are you eating something tasty for lunch? I hope you're doing all right. Whether you're in the United States, whether you're in the Pacific Northwest like me or on the East Coast, or if you're in another country, if you're in another continent, I want to make sure that everybody is doing okay. Hopefully everybody out there is doing all right. You're taking time to take care of yourself mentally and physically and all those good things. I know I have been keeping myself super friggin' busy. I have been so busy with work. My game studio has been hard at work. I'm actually wearing a brand new t-shirt to show off. Tomorrow, Microsoft is having their like E3 replacement kind of activities. They're doing a lot of announcements tomorrow. So if you can, make sure you tune in. I'm sure it's going to be all over the internet. You're probably not going to have any trouble finding the different announcements of Xbox Series X. Of course, it's supposed to be coming out later this fall. You can tune in tomorrow. Hopefully they'll share a little bit more details about that. There's going to be a great showcase of the game I'm working on, Halo Infinite, along with other Xbox Series X games. So I'm going to tune in. I'm going to check it out. It's going to be really, really awesome. I hope you guys are excited for it, if you're into that kind of thing. If you're not, if you're just here because you like to see me eat food, I'm also going to do that. Well, you know, here in America, we've had a lot of like political and legal unrest. Like a lot of people are like, it feels like the political system is in a state of upheaval, and it is kind of this idea of like different people pushing it back against different cultural norms, lots of shenanigans around the ways that our political system and our legal system need to change, to update, to get with the times. And it got me thinking about some of like the reasons behind why people have laws and why laws are not really, I wouldn't say that they're so much necessary for society, but like a legal system and laws in general are almost like this, how should I say, they're kind of like an inevitable thing that comes out of people getting together in a society and things like that. So it's not, so it is something that, of course, if we just got rid of the legal system in America, got rid of the legal system anywhere in the world, basically things would fall apart. So they are necessary in that sense, but they're not something that like you have to have before you have society, but it's something that's kind of like, how do you say it? Like it comes out of having society in itself. and I've listened to a couple of like philosophical lectures on the legal system, different topics along those lines, and it's so fascinating the way that legal systems work and the way that they actually evolve with cultural norms, that I thought it'd be cool to like sit down and actually talk a little bit about different like philosophical ideas of underlying some of the legal systems, and like why people even have laws in the first place. Why are they necessary? Why are they good? Things along those lines. I'm glad to see that we've got a couple of folks sitting in for today's lunch. Thank you guys. Always good to see you guys. I got Michael in the comments saying, "Hey Steve, no, not eating, but I'm going to eat some McDonald's tonight and have half a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts while watching your 3 dozen donut eating video, lol." That's awesome, man. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope you enjoy the donuts that you're eating too. Eric Gunnarsson, thank you for joining. I haven't seen you in a while. He says, "Hey man, long time no see. Great to be with you all again." Yeah, good to see you, man. Always good to see Eric Gunnarsson, all the Erics in the chat. Man, maybe it has been a while since we've had a good confluence of all the different Erics in the chat, but always good to see any one of you guys. All right, I'm gonna finish off this cookie. Got to keep your blood sugar up, keep your energy flowing, that kind of thing. So one of my favorite places to find information, I'm sure that you guys have seen me, if you've seen me in any of these lunch live streams where I like dive into a topic, like I try not to dive super deep into the nitty gritty, but give you this like kind of like a mile wide and an inch deep look into what's going on inside of my head. As honestly, I think that's the most interesting way to approach new topics and new ideas. Getting like really deep into the nitty gritty gets kind of, it gets a little bit boring. It's a little bit hard to kind of get invested in that kind of thing in such a short period of time. It's almost as though it's an intellectual snack, if you will. A snack for the brain. So one of my favorite websites, of course, to find this kind of like mile wide, inch deep level of information on just about any topic is Wikipedia. Not a great place to go if you want to write like a thesis or something like that, a master's thesis or a doctoral thesis, but it's always fun to go into one of those like what do you call them, like a clicking black hole or whatever it is, when you just click on different links and go down and drill down into different topics on Wikipedia, and you end up spending like an hour, just hours on end, just digging into random topics. All right, so this is the page on the philosophy of law, and I think it was cool how it kind of breaks the different philosophies into two different sections, and then breaks down like different applications of that of those different ways that you can bifurcate philosophy of law in general. So let's see. The philosophy of law is a branch of philosophy that examines the nature of law and law's relationship to other systems of norms, especially ethics and political philosophy. It asks questions like, what is law? What are the criteria for legal validity? And what is the relationship between law and morality? Philosophy of law and jurisprudence are often interchangeable, though jurisprudence sometimes encompasses forms of reasoning that fit into economics and sociology. Yeah, so I think like a decent broad overview of exactly what is philosophy of law and why you have laws in the first place. If you step back and think about it, like the reason that you have rules in place or laws in place is basically so that individuals won't accidentally or otherwise cause harm to other people or to nature. I feel like that's kind of at the root of any legal system, any good legal system anyway. So, for example, one law that, in my opinion, is completely invalid is something about something along the lines of criminalizing like homosexuality, for example. like regardless of how you feel about the topic of homosexuality itself, the idea of criminalizing something like that when somebody who is gay or non-gender normative, etc., pardon me, got a little something caught in my throat. But that kind of lifestyle only affects the person who subscribes to that kind of lifestyle. It's not something that is affecting others outside of that. They're not affecting others outside of their, outside of themselves, basically. On the other hand, you have something like, what is it called? Polygamy. There we go, polygamy. Polygamy on the surface might seem like, oh, that probably falls under the same category as homosexuality because people choose to be polygamous. They choose to be in a polygamous relationship. But if you look at it, it has a history of taking advantage of individuals who might not be 100% aware of the real ramifications of the choices they're making. The history of it is that it often results in especially young women tend to get taken advantage of in some polygamous relationships. So therefore, since polygamy can have a negative effect, it can cause harm to other people, then it makes sense to maybe criminalize that as opposed to criminalizing something like homosexuality, where it is just two individuals who are not affecting anybody outside of themselves. So now, with polygamy, I think that's like an interesting topic that can go either way. I think it is definitely a big discussion. My opinion is that, yeah, it's probably not something that should be federally legal, as it were, but I don't even know if it should be federally criminalized either. Like, honestly, I'm kind of either way on that one. Maybe it's like a state-by-state basis. I don't want to get like deep into the weeds of exactly how the United States federal legal system versus state-by-state legal system works. What would you call that? I can't even think of the right word. When a state has a law and there's a federal law that goes against that state law, then the federal law overrides it, basically. Like, it's kind of a complex thing. I don't really want to get too much into that because I'm talking about philosophy, which is more of like navel gazing. So let's see, the two different ways that they talk about laws and jurisprudence in this article is the analytical jurisprudence and the normative jurisprudence, where we say analytical jurisprudence seeks to provide a general account of the nature of law through the tools of conceptual analysis. I'm just reading the top of this bit right here. The account is general in the sense of targeting universal features of law that hold all times and places, whereas lawyers are interested in what the law is on a specific issue in a specific jurisdiction. Philosophers of law are interested in identifying the features of the law shared across cultures, times, and places. I think that's a little bit of a mouthful, but yeah, kind of gets the point across. Basically, it's like, I think analytical jurisprudence is basically like taking a look at the way that laws as they're applied and created relate to like cultural norms, I suppose would be a good way to put it. So moving on, like, I think the interesting bit is looking at like the different applications of analytical jurisprudence. Several schools of thought have been developed around the nature of law, and the most influential are natural law theory, which asserts that law is inherent in nature and constitutive of morality, at least in part. On this view, while legislators can enact and even successfully enforce immoral laws, such laws are legally invalid. The view is captured by the maxim, an unjust law is not a true law, where unjust means contrary to natural law. So I think that is kind of cool. Like, if even if there is a law that is in the books, if it is an unjust law, then maybe it shouldn't be followed. It's basically like, I know in a lot of military outfits, a lot of U.S. armed services, like, there's this understanding that a subordinate should follow the orders of a higher officer, but if that subordinate feels that the orders from that officer go contrary to basically like the spirit of how they should act in general, then it is their duty, it is the duty of the subordinate to go against those orders. So I feel like that's kind of what they're getting at with natural law theory, is basically like if a law feels bad, then it shouldn't even be a law in the first place. I mean, it makes sense. I think it is a very intuitive thing to think of. But unfortunately, there is the idea that, like, what makes a law unjust, what makes it good or bad, that is something that is very up for debate, very up to opinion. And I think it is one of the biggest reasons why something like the United States of America, where you can go from state to state, where laws and cultural norms and things like that are going to vary in different states. And that's one of the things that makes the United States of America so great, in my opinion. Let's have a little bit of that milk, huh? So, looking at the idea of polygamy, I believe there are some areas where polygamy is legal, and in most places in the United States, it is, in fact, illegal. So I believe that is something that somebody can, like, make the choice to live in those areas of the United States if they disagree with the majority of the place. Things along those lines. Or like I mentioned in some of my previous live streams about how some states have super, super strict gun laws. California, Washington, New York being a couple of the ones with lots of gun regulations. And there are other states like Alaska or Montana where there are much fewer gun laws, and there are a lot less. Like, it makes more practical sense to give people a little bit more freedom to make their own choices, things like that, in some of those states. So, just a couple of examples how I think natural law theory kind of plays out there. Changing laws for different contexts. Okay, legal positivism. Let's see if I can say that 10 times fast. I think legal positivism. Good grief, why can I not say that? Legal positivism. Legal positivism. I should have practiced that. Oh my goodness. Which is the view that the law depends primarily on social facts. Legal positivism has traditionally been associated with three doctrines: the pedigree thesis, the separability thesis, and the discretion thesis. The pedigree thesis says that the right of way to determine whether a directive is law is to look at the directive's source. The thesis claims that it is the fact that the directive was issued by the proper official with a legitimate government, for example, that determines a directive's legal validity, not the directive's moral or practical merits. I think that is totally ridiculous, that little bit right there. Basically, like, if a law comes from somebody who has authority, then obviously it needs to be followed. Like, maybe in some cases, it's good to follow somebody else's orders in certain contexts where maybe you don't have all of the information yourself. Maybe you're just following somebody for the sake of practicality or for safety, something along those lines. But just following a leader simply because they are a leader blindly and regardless of how you might feel otherwise, that's just complete nonsense. And again, that goes back to like how a subordinate in an army should actually go against their superior officer's orders if they feel that those orders go contrary to the spirit of maintaining a good and healthy society. I'm going to see how many of these cookies I can eat while reading this stuff. The separability thesis states that law is conceptually distinct from morality. While law might contain morality, the separability thesis states that it is in no sense a necessary truth that laws reproduce or satisfy certain demands of morality, though in fact they have often done so. Legal positivists disagree with the extent of the separability thesis. Exclusive law Positivists go further than a standard thesis and deny that it is possible for morality to be part of law at all. I cannot agree with this stuff much at all. If laws have no morals, then you're basically following rules just to follow rules. I don't agree with that stuff at all. I think that the rest of this kind of goes along with in that same vein. I feel like this is almost like it's almost like, I am the president of the United States, therefore I cannot do things that are illegal. It is not illegal if the president of the United States does it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's totally ridiculous without morality in law. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You cannot have, I should say, you should not have a law without morality to back them up. Now, these last two, legal realism and legal interpretivism, I think, like, those feel almost like the backbone of the legal system in the United States right now. Or legal realism basically says that the laws are made in real time as they're heard in courts and as they're decided by lawyers and things along those lines. Which asserts that a law is the product of decisions made by courts, law enforcement, and attorneys, which are often decided on contradictory or arbitrary grounds. According to legal realism, law is not a rational system of rules and norms. Legal realism is critical of the idea that law has a nature that can be analyzed in the abstract. Instead, legal realists advocate an empirical approach to jurisprudence founded in social sciences and the actual practice of the law in the world. So again, that's basically like, you get people who have good morals themselves, you put them in places of power like to be lawyers, to be judges, those kinds of things, to decide laws in real time, and that's how things tend to, and just kind of like hope that the decisions that those people make on a case-by-case basis then make sense. And I think that would be great if you had a smaller society. Maybe if you didn't have 350 some odd million people in a society all trying to get together in 50 distinct states and things along those lines, I think that would work just fine. But it isn't like, and it is a little bit of how the American legal system works, where if laws that I should say, something that comes up that is unprecedented in a legal system or in a court case or something like that, the decision made in that court case then kind of like gets cemented into law. So there's a little bit of that. But it does back away from that. Laws cannot be changed. They are not mutable in a court system if they go against previously decided cases. It is a little bit of a kind of wishy-washy there, but I don't know. It's a little bit difficult to articulate exactly how that works in the American system. I think legal interpretivism, which denies that law is a source-based because law necessarily depends on human interpretation that is guided by the moral norms of the communities. Given that judges have discretion to adjudicate cases in more than one way, legal interpretivism says that the judges characteristically adjudicate in the way that is best preserves the moral norms, institutional facts, and social practices of the societies in which they are a part. Again, I think that one is like spot on. I think that little bit right there is how I wish that was the way that things worked a little bit more. Basically, like, laws that apply in one area, maybe those laws shouldn't apply the same in another area, in another part of the world with different cultural norms, different societies, different ethics, those kinds of things. And I feel like the balance of state law and federal law does that a little bit. Like, if it doesn't make sense for a federal law to apply universally across the entirety of the United States, then that federal law just isn't made. And, then it is left up to each state to decide how to implement some specific law. I can't think of any good examples of that right now, but there you go, something like that. Of course, there are some universal ones that definitely make sense, like, different types of murder, for example. I don't know if there are any exceptions to the three types of murder in any of the states in the United States. So this last bit, the normative jurisprudence, I think is actually a little bit more interesting than the one before. It says, in addition to analytical jurisprudence, legal philosophy is also concerned with normative theories of law. Normative jurisprudence involves normative, evaluative, and otherwise prescriptive questions about the law. For example, what is the purpose of a law? What moral or political theories are the foundation for the law? Three approaches have been influential, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, I think that these bits, the normative jurisprudence, are the ones that I find most interesting. Basically, like, yeah, where does this come from? Why do they appear in the way that they are? And of utilitarianism and deontology, like, I don't know if either of those are particularly right or wrong. You know, I think that it's basically like, which one do you subscribe to, as opposed to one that should be applied universally. I don't know what this last one is. The Ariatic moral theories. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ariatic moral theories, such as contemporary virtue ethics, emphasize the role of character and morality. Virtue jurisprudence is the view that the laws. I'm reading this last bit, by the way. Reading the last bit first, is the view that the laws should promote and develop virtuous characters by citizens. Historically, this approach is associated with Aristotle. Contemporary virtue jurisprudence is inspired by the philosophical work on virtue ethics. That is a little bit wishy-washy. Like, it's kind of like, it sounds a little bit like the legal system should be put in place to make people virtuous, which I don't agree with entirely. I think that trying to decide what makes something virtuous is like, it doesn't. It sounds really bad. Basically, I don't want the government telling me what virtue is. You know, I want to be able to decide that for myself. And I think trying to impose what you believe is virtuous on other people is itself not a terribly virtuous thing. Again, there are plenty of universal ideas that I hope most people would subscribe to, but there's also a lot of stuff that is not universal that people disagree with, and where either side of a specific argument might be valid. It would just depend on the context. So leaving that up to individuals, I think, is a better way to go about it than to try to impose virtue on an entire populace. So utilitarianism, this is one that I subscribed to for a long time. And I still do, to a certain extent. Like, it does make sense to me. Let's see. Utilitarianism is the view that laws should be crafted so as to produce the best consequences. Historically, utilitarian thought regarded law as associated with the philosopher Jeremy Bentham. In contemporary legal theory, the utilitarian approach is frequently championed by scholars who work in law and economics tradition. Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. Like, you do the thing that creates the best outcome, basically. Kind of makes sense to me. It is a very cold and clinical way to go about trying to do anything, but it does make a lot of sense. And I certainly understand how utilitarianism sounds great on paper, but when you try to put it into practice, it is quite difficult to actually decide what utilitarianism would mean and what would be utilitarian in a specific context. A lot of times, people are much more driven by their emotions and how they feel at any one given time than they are by really considering and thinking about what would make the best outcome. Deontology is the view that laws should reflect our obligations to preserve autonomy and the rights of others. Historically, deontological thought regarding law is associated with Immanuel Kant, who formulated one particularly prominent deontological theory of law. Another deontological approach can be found in the works of the contemporary legal philosopher Ronald Dworkin. I think deontology is a little bit that I was trying to describe up front. Which is basically a law should be something that, a legal system should be something that restricts the rights of the individual as little as possible while preserving and protecting individuals from others. Basically, something along those lines. So to have a law is itself restrictive. Like it prevents you from doing something. Now, hopefully those things that it does prevent you from doing are not things that you would want to do anyway. Usually you make a law to stop people from doing bad things. So that's kind of what deontology is. So I think that if you dig into deontology, that's one of the more interesting concepts in my opinion. I love to read about that kind of stuff. Very delicious, these cookies. Oh my gosh. Well, guys, thank you for joining me for lunch. I hope that you guys were able to snack on something. If not, maybe you just grew your brains a little bit. I don't know. Maybe you found my ramblings about law and stuff like that to be, allow me to get off of my soapbox. I think that digging into philosophy is super interesting in my opinion, because it's like it picks apart things that are intuitively very obvious but really difficult to articulate. So having this eye on things like philosophy of natural order of things, even things like the philosophy of mind and thinking itself, is very interesting in my opinion. Like, you can go down rabbit holes that just are absolutely insane. You kind of feel like Alice in Wonderland a little bit. Well, I still got quite a few cookies to get through, but I also got to get back to work. So again, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you found it interesting. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed the live stream today. I plan on being back on Friday around noon. Probably going to be talking about what's going on Thursday, because I like video games and I think they're pretty awesome. So if you get a chance to, try to seek out Microsoft doing their big announcement, stuff like that tomorrow in lieu of E3 this year. So yeah, until next time, hope you guys have a good one. Peace out, and y'all take it easy.